Yeah, how are you, man? I already asked that, man. It's just been I don't know, like, oh man. I mean, where do we go from here? The words are coming out all weird.
Oh, all right. So we're just gonna go right into it. All right. Let's start this year off spicy. I like that.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And ladies and gentlemen, the way that we measure that distinction is Matthew and I travel to Ukraine and we go to Uganda. This podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. And it is indeed hosted by two dashingly good looking men who share the same middle name. I am the one. I am the only. I'm the one who is probably going to try to stay off the internet for the next 24 hours until he can see the finale of Stranger Things because he doesn't want to have anything spoiled for him. Why do we live in a society where you can't just, just keep your mouth shut for one day? Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the. I probably won't be staying off the internet, although I probably should for various reasons over the course of the next 24 hours. Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you who don't know what it is that we do here at Hey, Listen to This, it's pretty much right there in the title. Hey, Listen to This. Me and Ryan, every week we listen to an album of our choosing, and we come together and dissect it line by line, note by note, song by song, pick out what we like, what we don't like, and point out what we thought stood out, what we thought could have stood out a little more. Then at the end of the episode, we give the album a rating, and we give recommendations based off the album we just listened to in case you like to listen to something else based off what we have listened to. And last week, Ryan, we did our first ever true Christmas episode when we talked about a Christmas gift for you from Phil Spector or Phil's Records. And that was an interesting episode. What were your thoughts taken away from that episode, aside from some obvious ones I know you're probably thinking?
Well, I mean, for those of you who want to, those fun thoughts that Matthew was just alluding to, you can always just go rewind to the previous episode, take a 2 hour detour, come back and enjoy this episode. Make a Sunday out of it, man. But no, overall though, my thoughts about doing that review, it's crazy how impactful that individual record was in terms of the overall Christmas music landscape, because so many of the tracks off of there are standard Christmas tracks, songs that you hear throughout the holiday season, whether it's you're shopping at the mall, you're listening to Christmas music on the radio, or even you're simply just watching a Christmas movie. Like, it's crazy. Like, for example, Sleigh Ride off of that album. I've heard so much since doing that review, and I'm like, hey, I know where that track specifically came from, and it's not just from a white void where Christmas music is produced. But yeah, anyways, I overall though, it was a good time for me diving into that review with you. I had a blast doing it. How about with you, Matthew? What were your thoughts about the Christmas gift from Phil Spector?
I thought it was a nice experience to get to talk about all those songs at once and really, again, just sort of unpack not just the impact it's had on the holiday season, but the impact it's had really on the sounds of rock and roll altogether. Because, like I said, I don't think Pet Sounds or much of the Beach Boys' later stuff isn't somewhat influenced by Spectre overall, and this album in particular. It was a nice time talking about this album, and like Ryan said, if you want to go check that out, you are free to do so. So, first of all, before we go into what we're talking about this week, Ryan, a happy New Year to you.
And to you as well, man. For the listener out there who is just obviously listening to this little peek behind the curtain, we're literally recording this on New Year's Eve. So, I mean, the Stranger Things, reference probably might have, gave that away a little bit for those of you who know. But yeah, Happy New Year, man.
Happy New Year to you too. And from what I can tell, we're going to be starting the year off strong. What are we talking about for our first review of 2026?
So, for the first review of 2026, we are going to be concluding the mini-series that I threw upon myself in terms of challenging myself to pick older albums for us to talk about, and the definition for older albums for those of you who haven't been keeping up with our mini-series here, my mini-series here, it's basically albums released pre-2000. So it's crazy to think 2000 is almost 26 years away. 26 years ago, oh my goodness, man.
Jeez.
Oh man, I feel old. No, I don't feel old. Anyways, bring it back. But yeah, and throughout this miniseries that I've taken us through, we've discussed impactful artists like Black Sabbath, the Beach Boys, and we've done impactful years within music, and we've done a little bit side detours and looked to Britpop with the Suede episode that kicked off the whole mini-series. So what's left to talk about, you might be asking? Well, I decided to have a little bit of a wild card round, and there's been this one artist who, I mean, we haven't talked about per se, but it's definitely a notable artist that got its start in the pre-2000 times and really found their footing before the year 2000. And that band that we're going to be talking about here today, ladies and gentlemen, it's gonna be Radiohead, and the specific album that we're going to be talking about within their discography is The Bends, because Matthew chose to be a water sign instead of an air sign at the end of last week's episode. For those of you who are kind of curious what the air sign album would have been, it would have been the next album in their discography, which is OK Computer, for those of you who aren't aware. But I'm excited to be talking about The Bends here today because, I mean, as I get into the overview here, I think one can make the argument that The Bends is a very critical album within the career of Radiohead. Now, for those of you who are like, whoa, Ryan, back up. I was just born in the year of 2017, and I am 8 years old, and I've never heard of this band called Radiohead. Well, first of all, thank you for being a listener and expanding our age demographics. So props to you, the 8-year-old out there that's listening to us right now. But for those of you who are not 8 years old and still don't know what a Radiohead is, or just want me to do a brief overview of the group and what led them to making The Bends, allow me to be your tour guide. So Radiohead themselves, they met in the mid 1980s while attending the Abington School in Oxfordshire, England. And do you want to know what they initially what their first band name was?
Oh wow. First band name for Radiohead. That's a good one. Just based on what they were going on with this album, I'm just going to take a wild guess and say The Iron Lung.
Close, but no, not really close, man. But I appreciate the gesture there, though. So no, the first name for the group was On a Friday, and for those of you oh, well, that's a odd name. Well, it's a literal reference to the only day the school allowed them to use the music room to rehearse.
Oh wow! Oh jeez, that's clever. I like that.
Yeah. So yeah, like I mentioned, the band formed in the mid 1980s while in school. The band formed with Tom York on vocals and guitar, Ed O'Brien on guitar as well, and Colin Greenwood on bass. After an initial show using a drum machine, they recruited Philip Selway to sit behind the kit. The final piece of the puzzle for the group was actually Colin's younger brother, Johnny Greenway, who joined 3 years later. So, the group was just, touring, doing, not touring, but just doing shows around school and everything like that. So, and despite early interest from Island Records, the band made a pivotal decision. They actually decided to prioritize their education. This led to a 4-year hiatus where they barely performed while attending different universities. So in 1991, they reunited in Oxford, shared a house, and recorded a demo that finally caught the attention of the major labels. Then, December 21st, 1991, the band signed a 6-album deal with EMI. But the label had one immediate request. Can you guess what that request was, Matthew?
That they change the name of the band?
There you go, man. Circle gets a square. So that's where they pivot from On a Friday to Radiohead. And the way they got the name, they took it from a song on a Talking Heads album, and that album is True Stories. So shout out to the Talking Heads. We actually reviewed one of their albums for one of our very first review. Well, our first slew of reviews. So if you want to rewind, way back in our catalog, dear listener, have fun with that. That was a fun episode. I very much enjoyed doing that. So yeah, for Tom York, the name Radiohead was more than just a tribute to the Talking Heads. It represented the way people absorb and react to the information in their environment. So their debut single was an unexpected global juggernaut. Do you remember what that single was?
I believe that single would be Creep, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yes, so the global success of Creep, it put them on the map, and it created immense pressure. The band felt pigeonholed as a Nirvana light grunge act, and they actually had a lot of anxieties if they wouldn't be able to live up to that initial success. So so we get a group who just broke out with Creep being a global success around the time. Keep in mind, this is 1991 and 1991, 1992. So grunge is happening, and they get labeled as a grunge light act, and they're like, oh no, are we going to be kind of lost in the shuffle? I don't think we can live up to this this status. So as 1994 began, Radiohead entered Abbey Road Studios with producer John Leckie to start their second album. It was a period this period was defined by a creative deadlock. And the sessions were plagued by high tensions. The band was fighting the one-hit wonder label, and they struggled with the expectations of both the public and their own record label. So, it's kind of... I don't want to, draw a one-for-one comparison, but it was basically kind of similar to, how the Beatles wanted to make one last record, and they had that initial idea of Get Back, but it was just tensions were high, and they couldn't break this deadlock because they were oh no, are we gonna be a one-hit wonder kind of act? And the record label was wanting more. So to break this stalemate, they decided to leave the studio and hit the road, and they did some touring. They hit up Asia, Australia, and Mexico. And this right here was honestly their turning point, and probably, honestly, gave Radiohead the spark that they needed to, become who they are today, because they were playing the new material live at these shows, the material that they were, forming in the studio sessions, and the response to the crowd gave them confidence to really just embrace what direction they were going in. So during this tour, York began to push back against the MTV eye candy lifestyle. He felt the industry was trying to sell a version of him that wasn't real. This frustration became the emotional engine for the new songs. So, as the band returned to finish the album, two vital figures enter the fold here. Nigel Godrich, then an audio engineer, and artist Stanley Donwood. The group, they released the My Iron Lung EP in 1994 as a shot across the bow. It was a deliberate move away from simple grunge and towards much more complex and atmospheric kind of music. And working under Leckie, Godrich formed a bond with the band that would lead to him producing every Radiohead album, earning him the title of the band's sixth member. And by the time the Bends was completed in 1995, the sound of the album had transformed. It was no longer just guitar and drums. It was a landscape of dense riffs, ethereal atmospheres, and keyboards. And when the Bends finally did arrive, it did something that Creep never could. It honestly gave them credibility. It allowed them to break away from the one-hit wonder stereotype, and I don't know. You can, ladies and gentlemen out there, you can probably think of a handful of one-hit wonder bands out there, and Radiohead was able to escape that with the album that we're talking about here today. And while the Bends did not match the immediate commercial explosion of Creep, it convinced the music world and the band members themselves, more importantly, that they were a serious artistic force. It proved that they were right to stay together and that their true potential was only just beginning to be realized. So, yeah, that's a brief overview of Radiohead, how they formed, and what the backstory for the Bends, the album that we're talking about here today. Now, before I go into my history about the group and my relationship with the band as a whole, I'm gonna flip it over to you, Matthew. Are you a fan of Radiohead? Do you have Tom York's phone number in your phone? Are you guys best friends? Tell me what's the relationship like?
I do not have the man's phone number, and I don't know if I could afford that kind of long-distance calling at this point in my life. But as far as Radiohead is concerned, yeah, I found out about them in an interesting way. So, I know a lot of times, whenever I've talked about bands of high critical acclaim, the first words out of my mouth would be something like Rolling Stone. But ironically enough, the way I found out about Radiohead was actually through a pop catalog, that particularly being the Now That's What I Call Music series, because on the first edition of the U.S. Series, back from 1998 or 1997, one of the songs on there, believe it or not, was from OK Computer, entitled Karma Police. So it's on there with the likes of Casey and JoJo, the Backstreet Boys, Janet Jackson. Just sort of slid down in there, track 14 or 15 is Radiohead with Karma Police. Now, did they ever get back onto that compilation? Absolutely not. But that is how I found out about them the first time around. So, I thought that was kind of interesting, and then later on when I got more into the critical side of music in my classic rock era, I did start reading about them more, whether it be through the likes of Mojo or Rolling Stone. But I never really pushed that trigger to be okay, maybe I'll check these guys out. And then the one day, must have been during the summer because I had so much free time, Ryan, by any chance, do you remember Music Choice?
I do remember Music Choice only for the well, I don't want to say for the only factor of when I'm at my in-laws' house and we're scrolling through the channels and the extended channels, like Music Choice is still there. But yeah, I remember it.
Okay. Well, they had, because back in the day when my parents had Comcast, they had an on demand channel that featured select music videos, whether they be new ones or old ones. And one of the older ones they had was from Radiohead, and that was another song off OK Computer called Paranoid Android. And I watched that music video and I was like, oh, okay, now this is the kind of band that is willing to take some risks and do some crazy stuff. But I kind of left it at that. That was roughly around late 2000s. And then the 2010s roll around, and I meet one Mr. Ryan Kearns, who pushes my thoughts of Radiohead a little further to the point where I think we did an episode of Music Talk 101 about that. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm almost positive we did because I also remember around that time giving a full listen to Kid A, which is a record I need to get back into because just to figure out what the hell that was. But realistically, they're never been a band I've really been super into. Not that I haven't been high on them. What I've listened for them, I've liked. But I've never really gone full-fledged into the deep dives of Radiohead. So it was kind of nice to do that a little bit with this record. So I turn it over to you, Ryan, to sort of pick up where I left off. What is your experience with Radiohead?
So, my experience with Radiohead, there's a couple different things that help me become I don't want to say like a Radiohead stan because I know that there's some like music people out there who are this is literally like their favorite band. I'm gonna be honest with you, Radiohead's not even in my top 5, maybe my top 10, but not top 5 favorite acts of all time. But yeah, the way I got introduced to the group proper was during my I want to say just explosion into diving into indie rock. For those of you who are a little bit familiar with me and my backstory in terms of how my music taste has evolved over time. There was the faithful purchase of reading a Rolling Stone magazine and flipping over to a review of a Mind Morning Jacket album, and that album, for like contextual sake, is Evil Urges. And I listened to the album, and I through enjoying that album, I decided to branch out into different other artists within the indie rock sphere. And so around that time, Evil Urges was released in 2008. The album from Radiohead that was released in 2007, for those of you who aren't aware, it was In Rainbows, and the internet sphere was going batshit crazy over this album for the sole fact that Radiohead basically put this album up on the website for a pay as you want kind of system here. This is essentially what Bandcamp operates out of now for for some artists who put their music up there. But yeah, a group with that much notoriety at this point in their career, they've made the band, they made OK Computer, they made Kid A, all critically acclaimed albums. And for them to stick a middle finger into the music industry system and saying, hey, we're putting up our new album, pay what you want. It could be 10 cents, it could be $10,000, what have you. So I didn't buy that album offline though because I was trying to save money at the time, and but I did listen to In Rainbows, and I really enjoyed what was going on within that record. And then from there, I went back into their earlier stuff, a couple of the albums that we already mentioned, and like I kind of let that fizzle out for a little bit. And then when I got to college, one thing that I decided to do for like for I think for like a week, at night I would treat myself to checking out albums, listening to them, looking at the lyric sheets, and just really diving into like what music was what music could do for me, and like what different bands and artists were doing. I did a dive into Radiohead's catalog through this journey, so I became familiar with like essentially everything that they released. I'm not so much into like Pablo Honey, but I listened to it a couple times. It's fine. But yeah, and then from there, like they're honestly a band to this day that if someone were to ask me, "Hey, Ryan, what band out there right now is like the most impactful and one of the most important acts that can well, they technically have reformed to do tours. Like they're one of the acts that if they come back through Pittsburgh, I'm gonna be like, shut up, take my money. And when they if they do announce that they're releasing a new album, I'm gonna be like, oh shit, yeah, like sign me up, man, because like it's gonna be a very impactful album. It's always kind of like it feels like an event when Radiohead releases something, and like I don't know, they just seem like such an important band to me that I would put them on the pedestal, like right up against the Beatles. If I had to be honest with you, in terms of like important bands within musical history.
Wow.
So yeah, that's a brief overview of like my relationship with the group and how it has evolved over time.
A few things based on what you said. First of all, I do remember the scandal behind the In Rainbows Pay As You Go thing, which is fascinating now because almost 20 years later, Bandcamp is a thing, and a lot of artists on there, whether it's through just a special or the fact that they might be defunct or just feeling charitable, they have done the same thing. So what they did was rather revolutionary for 2007. Secondly, it's fascinating to hear you talk about how your method of getting into Radiohead in college was very much the method of how we do this show now, which is to create an avenue to dive into artists we really haven't got into before. And lastly, about your comment about seeing them on tour, we came close the one time because we did not see Radiohead. We did see one of the side acts featuring Tom York, I believe. What was it? Tom York and Johnny Greenwood were the two?
Yep.
Yeah. And that was the band Smile, and I believe that was from 2 years ago in 2024 that we saw them live? Or
I do believe so, yeah. Well, but it's 2024 is almost 2 years ago now, so...
It is. But yeah, I remember the band sounded great. The experience was not great, but we will save that story for another time, boys and girls. But yeah, the Radiohead, like you said, they are a very important band. They are very much a band that is trying to just, come up with whatever it is that's on their mind. And we have 12 tracks from 1995 that may or may not fall into that category of what they seek out to do. So, Ryan, if you're ready, I'm ready to talk about the Bends, and I kick it over to you for the opening track on the Bends, which is Planet Telex.
Yeah, so with Planet Telex here, this is a solid start to the album. You get a lot of interesting stuff happening without, overwhelming the listener. Like, honestly, throughout this record, you're not going to find anything that's going to overwhelm the listener as compared to, I don't know if you check out anything off of Kid A or Amnesiac. Oh my god, Amnesiac. That's a daunting record. Or King of Limbs. Anyways, so starting with the instrumentals within Planet Telex here. The thing I was drawn to immediately with the instrumentals here within the song is the guitar by Johnny Greenwood. Like, he's doing some solid effects here, man, and it almost seems like, at least to my ears, the different shifts that occur within the song are due to Johnny's like direction and what he's doing on the guitar here. Like right out of the gate, you kind of get that like spacey delayed effect pedals, and then in the verses, you get like a more established delay effect pedal. But yeah, it's just it's very solid. I very much appreciate what's going on there, and then also giving credit to the bass and drums. Like if you zoom in, they're doing some very interesting stuff. Like they can due to like how this album was recorded and how like prominent Johnny Greenwood is on guitar. They like the bass and drums can get lost in the mix if you aren't paying attention. But dear listener, I heavily advise you to like dive into like some earbuds, headphones, and just zoom in and listen to the bass and drums and see what they're doing there because it's very good, very effective. So other things within the song that I did appreciate is that you get like that build up going into the chorus, like it's just very tension, and then you get the relief. And it's a very nice touch. I do very much appreciate that. And York himself, he's delivering some passionate vocals. I know Tom York's vocals aren't for everyone. I know, shout out to my friend Mike from high school. When I would play Radiohead for him, he would absolutely hate Tom York's vocals. He's since turned around a little bit because he's gotten taste over time. But anyways, yeah. So overall, though, like with Planet Telex, it was a solid start to the record. And fun fact about this song here, it's the only song on the album not written before recording sessions began. It was recorded one night after the band had been drinking heavily, and Tom provided his vocal tracks while laying on the floor of the studio. So, for those of you who might be out there who hear the song and compare it to the rest of the album, it might seem like this might be a little bit of an underdeveloped like song. That's why, because it was basically written kind of like last minute, and it's a good song nonetheless. And in terms of like overall meaning with the song for me seems to be about expressing frustrations about no matter what you can do in certain circumstances in life, you can't fix things because everything's broken and we live in a broken society. But yeah, solid start to the album. Not a top track for me, and contextual sake, I only have a top 3 within this review. I don't have a bottom of anything, but there was one track that kind of came close.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you as far as that. I will start by disclosing that as far as my rankings. I also have a top 3 and a bottom nothing with one that kind of comes close. This track is not it, though, because, first of all, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The chord changes at the start of this song and the way that, like you say, Greenwood is using that pedal effect to make that warbly type of uneasy feeling sound, it's very effective. And you mentioned during your overview that they were worried about being a Nirvana light. I don't think Nirvana's doing that with their guitars and doing that with their sound. Obviously, this is 1995 and Nirvana was not a thing anymore, but the point still stands across. And you mentioned Tom York's vocals. The way that he sounds, it very much teeters the line between sounding mellow and sounding very tense. Like the color of his vocals sounds relaxed, but at the same time, the passion that he's throwing into them does add that little bit of tension, and it does work well with the tense musical choices that Greenwood is making. I agree with you that the drums and the bass are doing great stuff. Colin Greenwood, and especially Phil Selway, he is absolutely bringing some sort of funk on this track, and he does do a good job throughout a lot of these tracks, particularly the harder rocking tracks on the bends. Um, the only slight I would have with this song, and it's going to be a slight I have with a lot of these songs, and it's not necessarily one that drove anything down to bad territory, but it was just kind of one of those I wish it was. And I wish that Tom York's vocals were produced a little clearer. Granted, I know that a lot of times bands will do that for effect to sort of push everything to the front together. And here it actually works very, very well. And I didn't hate it as much on this track because I think I understood a good bit of what he was trying to say. But there are moments where he isn't quite as clear, and I wish I could understand it. But still, great vocal performance, great band performance, and I do like the simplicity and uneasiness, sort of cryptic lyrics, particularly on the chorus where he's singing "everyone is broken, everything is broken," and the fact that he was able to push out a big feeling like this while lying on the floor after a night of drinking is quite impressive indeed. But for me, this was probably the top cut as far as not making into my top three. This was close. This probably could be a number 4 on most given days. But Planet Telex is a very strong start to the record.
So one thing I want to comment on before we shift on over to the title track here is your comment on York's vocals and how they weren't produced cleanly. It honestly, with the exception of probably from In Rainbows onward, I think that's the case with a lot of his stuff. And then even in when his vocals are cleanly produced, I know specifically within In Rainbows, he kind of can get a little bit lost in the sauce, or he doesn't enunciate his. I don't want to say enunciate, but it's kind of hard to understand it sometimes, and that's just the style of his voice, it's how he sings. But it's a point well taken. I mean, we've discussed controversial vocalist or not an acquired taste vocalist in the show before with our Bob Dylan episode. So
or Bjork,
and then Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
So man, Bruce Springsteen. But yeah, I don't want to say I'm a little surprised that this was a little bit of a top cut for you in terms of not making it into your top 3, because this track right here, it's a fine track. It's not in an album track territory, but not a top 3, like I said. And for honestly, it wasn't in contention for a top track whatsoever. So, but we must progress on. We must find out what are the bends. And Matthew, I'm gonna shift it over to you. Tell everybody what's going on with this title track here.
Well, what's going on with this title track, The Bends, is that here you have a bit more of a traditional classic alt-rock sound, something you would expect to hear in an alt-rock scene, whether it's a radio station or a collection of sorts. You would probably hear a song like this because it sounds very straightforward, heart-rocking wise. Once again, I got to point out that Phil Selway, probably more so than on Planet Telex, is bringing some heat on the set. He is really just providing a brash mise en scène for the Greenwoods and Tom York to just sort of go all over the place. And York himself, I do got to give credit where credit's due. You mentioned his vocals, and now that I think about it, out loud, a lot of my favorite Radiohead songs also have that same issue, but I didn't mind it as much then, because it's okay for your vocals to get lost in the sauce if the sauce is primo good stuff. And here you get a situation where it's good sauce, and York's vocals, particularly on the bridges, or what I'm going to call the bridges of this song, definitely take a much more futuristic turn. You get that sort of phase in, phase out mechanical sound that makes it feel like he's really in a place of chaos and disruption. And I thought that was a very nice production job and a very nice performance by him to sort of, you know, pseudo hush his own vocals and let the engineer do the rest. Aside from that, though, I thought this was a very straightforward, solid song about just sort of that feeling of unease of, you know, what if everybody around me has the bends? What if everything is not going to function as I hoped it would? It's another one of those ones where you're not sure what exactly he's talking about, even after I looked at the lyrics. But at the same time, he is very much delivering this song with a lot of gusto, a lot of power, and a lot of emotion. And the band's right there along with him. The guitar sounds great, just slashing through and through. Bass sounds really good. Drummer sounds really good. So yeah, this is a really, really strong album track too. Not as strong as Planet Telex, though, and to me, not strong enough to land in my top 3.
So I'm gonna start my discussion. I mean, it's interesting again that you were higher on Planet Telex, but if I had to be honest with you, I'm higher on the bends compared to Planet Telex. But it's not a top 3, and it wasn't like a top cut for me. I'm gonna start my discussion though by addressing the lyrics here, because I think it's very important to take a look at the lyrics within the context of where the band was at the time. In the bends themselves, like, you know, the thing that he's referring to, it's basically about that unsure feeling of who your real friends are. Because you go think about what's going on in Radiohead's life at this time. They're starting to blow up. They had Creep be like a gigantic Titanic single, and people were starting to come out of the woodwork and like, oh, hey, we're friends, and like essentially this track was about that. And like also one of my favorite lyrics coming right out of the gate here is the set of lyrics that I used to introduce the show here, which was, where do we go from here? The words are coming out all weird. And you got to think about like that being the introduction to the track. And earlier in the overview of Radiohead, I was talking about like the creative deadlock that the group was going through. They were trying to overcome Creep, and they like for that to be self-reflected in the opening bars of this song here. That's just very good lyric writing. I very much appreciate what's going on there. And for those of you who are kind of curious about, like, you know, what the bends are, though, in the scientific terms, it's known as decompression sickness. It occurs when dissolved gas comes out of a solution, forming bubbles in the blood. This condition demonstrates Henry's law, which states that more gas will be dissolved in a liquid when the gas is pressurized, more commonly found in deep water. Divers that ascend too quickly. The bends can occur at other times during rapid pressure changes. So, like, you know, the bends, who your friends are when pressure changes, and like how are you reacting to that. Now, getting into the nuts and bolts about the song on the sonic front. There's just so much going on here. Like, again, you gave the flowers to Phil Selway. I'm gonna give it to Johnny Greenwood on the instrumental front here, because he's just being a madman on that guitar, dude. Like, the way that he's able to shift between different modes, just laying down like solid rocking, like, you know, licks, solemn moments, the stuff that you were alluding to where they pull back and they let the engineer have like some fun with it. The sections that you described as, like, you know, the ridges within the track. And then also, like, towards the end, like, you know, towards like that big, like, gigantic explosion where York is like proclaiming that he wants to be part of the human race. Like, the licks that are coming out of Johnny Greenwood in terms of like his lead licks, like, oh my god, so good. It's so impactful, man. Like, love it so much. Um, I did enjoy that shift though that you alluded to, that you labeled as like the bridges within the track. I thought that was a very nice touch, and it's an important thing to have within a song like this, because you could have just had a standard rock song, but this is where Radiohead is really starting to play with their sound and have like some fun with it. It's also a very nice touch when you get to hear more of the drums taking the lead focal point. So always a fan of that when you can pass the lead off to different instruments within the track. And yeah, just the way that everything sounds when York is singing "My Baby's Got the Bends." Everything's just so big, and I love it. You can really, literally just taste the emotion. So, there's several moments within this track where you can just taste the emotion, and there's highs, lows, everything. It's a very deep song. So yeah, I'm a fan of the title track here, but like I said, not a top three and not a top cut for me in terms of that top three.
Yeah, it's to me, it's a very solid song, and I'm glad you were able to dissect what the lyrics mean, because I kind of felt that that's what. Because again, I didn't know it was directly based off of their feelings of pressure to become the next big alt rock thing. But even if I hadn't realized that, you could still feel that tension, in the lyrics of, what if my baby's got the bends? Oh no, where do we go from here? And, you could just tell based off that alone that they're thinking that something's going wrong. And now we know what that something is.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, without any further ado, are you okay if I shift into the very next track here, which is High and Dry?
Absolutely, man. Go for High and Dry.
All right, I won't leave you high and dry. In that, I will shift us on over to this track here. So, with High and Dry here, we get a very important moment within the landscape of the record, because you think about, we had Planet Telex, the band's two rocking songs that play with atmosphere, and they show Radiohead's different kind of side here, but they were starting to break out of Creed, but still someone could maybe try to pigeonhole them into oh, you're just doing grunge but in a different kind of sense. Oh, hold on. Hold my beer. Here comes High and Dry with breaking the sonic barriers down here. With here, I just love the shifting gears, because instead of more of an electrical kind of electric guitar kind of focus here, we get just the acoustic guitar throughout the song, and you also get some solid work from the drums here. But everything's basically stripped down to bare bones, and everything is more about the emotion and the vocal performance from York, and he delivers. The way that he just sounds when the way that he sounds in the chorus is so solid, and especially when he goes up high. And then also within that chorus, it's just so satisfying when you get that feeling where he ends the chorus by saying, "Don't leave me dry," and you can tell that the band's pausing, and it lands a note, and it's such a good feeling for me, man. I absolutely love that when a band's able to pull that off within the context of a song. And yeah, just the overall package here is just so satisfying, so good. And I'm gonna talk about a lyrical highlight, because outside of that, there's not really much else for me to talk about. The lyrical highlight here for me was found in, I do believe, the second verse. Yeah. Drying up in conversation, you'll be the one who cannot talk. All your insides fall to pieces. You just sit there wishing you could still make love. Think about, again, what was going on at the time with the group, because they were blowing up. They were you figure society figures if people get fame, notoriety, oh, you're going to become this very interesting person. You're going to have everything figured out. Well, this is York basically saying, I don't have anything figured out. like in conversations, like I kind of just dry up, and like the line about all your insides fall to pieces. Oh, fuck me sideways with that line, man. Just that whole section rules. And another thing I do want to speak about before I give my official ranking of the song, because it did land in my top three. Spoiler alert. Is like you come like coming right out of the gate, you get the lyrics: 2 jumps in a week. I bet you think that's pretty clever, don't you, boy? Well, it's not a highlight for me, but for contextual sake, for those of you who aren't, up to the British slang as I am, apparently, jumps is just slang for having sex. So, in Britain. But yeah, I absolutely love what's going on here with it in High and Dry. It's a very impactful song for me, and it's always been a favorite Radiohead song for me, due to the feelings and the lyrics and just everything that's being brought to the table. So in terms of ranking in my top 3, this song here, High and Dry, is my second favorite song off the whole record.
And for me, High and Dry, like you said, it breaks the rock palette and goes into a softer acoustic mode. My first note here is that it is a pre-Wonderwall, or at the very least has a very 90s coded sound. Although, in hindsight, this feels like it's not just coded, it is the code, because I can't really think of too many songs before this that sounded like this, although I can think of at least 2 off the top of my head that sound like it after the fact. I mentioned one of them, I'll mention the other in a little bit here. But Tom York's performance on this track is fantastic. The way that he very calmly and very wiltfully matches the acoustic timbre of the guitar, it just flows and fits so well on this track. And what makes this track so interesting and genius is that you get the chorus where, like you say, York is very much just floating with that melody going, "You don't leave me high, don't leave me dry." And then you get to the verses where he is very, very bitter and pissed off about something. And again, probably rightfully so. Because, like you said, he is contemplating the stereotypes that rock stars are supposed to have, and it just feels very bitter and impassioned. Almost, we haven't used this one in a while, but I'll use it here. This feels like the Benz' Idiot Wind, in a sense. Although in this sense, the idiot very well may be the bandmates himself, and York very much might be talking about himself. But if he's not, so be it. You have the right to be bitter on your own pieces of art. Musically, it sounds really good, and I love how on the, for lack of a better term, guitar solo, how Johnny Greenwood does not really do anything fancy at all. He just maintains that momentum that has built throughout the course of the song. And it's the second you mentioned that the little like fade out, the Ryan Kearns musical kink of the band dropping out at the end of the chorus, as soon as I thought of that, because in my notes I have Chris Martin was absolutely listening to this shit, and then as soon as you said what you said, I thought, oh my goodness, this is complete. This is the basis for Yellow. Like, this is very much the father, the DNA, egg donor father of Coldplay's Yellow. Not that that song's bad. I likes me some Yellow, and I think that's one of Coldplay's better songs. But you saying what you said, all of a sudden, I'm just like, wait a minute. I'm putting 2 and 2 together, and all of a sudden, we have a paternity test that rivals a movie that just came out that I'm not going to spoil for everybody. But, yeah, this song rules, and I will coin a phrase you have mentioned before, which is, I have ears, I know what I like, and I like the song. To the point where it is also in my top 3, and, much like you, I have it at number 2.
Oh my goodness, man! Okay. So, and I'm very happy about that, man. And yeah, I didn't catch the the Chris Martin Coldplay Yellow connection until now, but now I'm not gonna be able to hear like Yellow. I'll
Right.
think about High and Dry. So that's fantastic. But yeah, this song absolutely rules for a reason, and I'm glad that you enjoy it as much as I do, man. So yeah, without any hesitation, I think we just keep this sad boy train rolling with the next song here being "Fake Plastic Trees."
Yes, fake plastic trees, and it's funny you mention how this continues the sad boy train because maybe it's just the typical rock mode that was throughout the 70s, maybe even the 60s, or well, definitely the 60s and 70s, and maybe a little bit of the 80s. But whenever you hear a song like High and Dry come on a rock album or an album by a rock band, your first instinct is, oh, that was the acoustic song. Now we're going to get back to rocking. No, 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 no. We're not done here yet. The sad boy train will keep a rolling all night long. And that was the first thing I noticed. Like, oh, we stripped things down with High and Dry, and now we're stripping them down even more with Fake Plastic Trees. And this song, to me, I've seen it critically acclaimed a number of times for one reason or another. I think I've seen it on some like greatest songs of all time list. I think Rolling Stone might have had this in their top 500. But to me, though, this song is a solid song where you basically get what I like to call the Frank Zappa philosophy, where everything is plastic and the world is plastic and it sucks. Once again, you have Tom York matching the tone of the song and how stripped down it is. His vocals are very much right in tandem with the bare bones backing. And I do like the anti-drops throughout this track, where you just basically get very little more than Tom York's vocals and the very barest of beats. I did wish his vocals were slightly clearer once again, but I'm not going to harp on that too much because I did pick up some lyrics just listening to him, which is at the end where he's singing, "If it wears me out, it wears me out. And if I could be who you wanted, I would be." So, yeah, this is a very plaintive song and very much follows up High and Dry in a strong way. Because, again, you would think that the sort of mildness of High and Dry would, be countered with some more rock, but Fake Plastic Trees goes one further down, and you can very much hear the almost brokenness in Tom York's voice. He says he's singing about how things aren't the way they are and how everyone around him is worn out and he's worn out. So this was another one right along the lines of Plant Telex, which was in a dogfight for that number 3 spot, but didn't quite get there. But I would definitely have Fake Plastic Trees in the top half of tracks here on the Bends. It's a good one.
So, yeah, I kind of fell down a rabbit hole here, like looking into the Rolling Stone top 500 rankings because you mentioned about Fake Plastic Trees. So, as of their most recent updates and their 21 and 24 updates, this song's no longer on the list. So, originally in 2004, it was ranked as 385, and then the 2010, 2012 revisions, it was ranked 376. But yeah, it's no longer on the list, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, I'm a lot higher on this track than you, for a couple different reasons. But like a lot of things that you mentioned, I do appreciate. But I'm gonna just dive into like my overview of the track as a whole and how this did land in my top 3. Spoiler alert. So, but yeah, so for me, the star of the show on the instrumental front is again the guitar. The way that, but like alongside the guitar, the way that the strings and the church organ, yes, ladies and gentlemen, there's a church organ here, accompany the vocals in certain sections. It just sounds so good. to my ears. It's so pleasant. It builds off that effect that High and Dry was trying to build with being solemn, but it adds different like layers of like instrumentation without being overpowering. So good. I love the instrumentals here. York's vocals, like you mentioned, like it's really like they're really solid, and for me, like I just see him wearing his emotions right on his sleeve, especially throughout the song. Like the ending of the song where York is singing, and if I could be who you wanted, and if I could be who you wanted all the time, you can really feel the sad boy feels within that section. And oh my god, chef's kiss, man. It's just so fucking good. Um, and like outside of like even like those solemn moments, like the way that everything sounds so big in that third verse where York is singing about wanting to blow through the ceiling and turn and run, like oh my goodness, like this song, it's basically taking the elements of the Bends and High and Dry and kind of combining it with like making its own like musical baby. And it's I very much believe that this is a beautiful baby in its own right. But yeah, just like oh my god, like this song is just so bleeping good. Like a lot of people say that this song here is anti-consumerism, but I don't know, like, and the band might honestly back that as well, but I just feel like this song here is just about how life degrades people over time, because the whole second verse, like another lyrical highlight I want to throw at you is the second verse. It's talking about living with a broken man who's a cracked porcelain man who just crumbles and burns. Who used to do surgery for girls in the 80s, but gravity always wins. Like, oh my god, dude! Like, what the fuck? Like, that's just so good. And it's just this here is the encapsulation of why, like what made Radiohead pivoting away from creep and going into like what they would eventually become, because you get big feelings, you get solemn moments, you get layers of instrumentation, you get the complete package, man. So, I mean, without any further ado, like, I'm just gonna come out and, like, give my official ranking of Fake Plastic Trees within the context of the Bends. And it is not my second favorite song off the record, because we already talked about High and Dry, and it's not my third favorite song. Fake Plastic Trees indeed takes the cake, man.
And I respect the hell out of that, man. Again, this song is very, very good. And like you said, the lyrics and the just performance by York is top tier. Just something about it. I don't know. Like, if you were to ask me if I would rather listen to this or High and Dry, I'm picking High and Dry probably 9 times out of 10. But I understand why a lot of people love this song. And this is probably one of those ones where maybe come back to me in a couple years and I'll revisit this album and I might share the same thoughts you do. But I still share a lot of the same thoughts you do now, because I did think that this song was very, very good. So I'm glad to hear you put it at the top of your list, man.
Yeah, man. Like, I don't know. There could have been like other tracks that I could have like included in my top 3, and maybe like I could have put High and Dry up there, but like I don't know. This is the complete package within the record for me, man. With all things considered, but moving on to a different change in gears with the next track here being about bones, and those bones contain, it's not a bad track, man. And for me, like I kind of view this as like an emotional reset from the 2 previous Juggernaut Sad Boy tracks, because if you would have hit us with another like depressing like song, they probably could have pulled it off well, but from the sequencing aspect of the record, I very much enjoy this. And like with Bones, we kind of get back into that rocking boy territory, and And I do like that. But if I had to be honest with you, like this this track could be an album track territory. Again, not a bad track though. But getting into the nooks and crannies here, um, Johnny Greenwood on guitar is again leading the charge here, and I do like his way of switching up between pure rock vibes and like just dial back rock vibes within the verses. Like it's pretty much a decent highlight for me. The chorus within the track is pretty simple and impactful. Doesn't get overly complicated. And the section where York is just singing about flying like Peter Pan, it's just it probably kept this track from being an album track kind of track, if I had to be honest with you, as redundant as that was for me to say, but it's definitely a highlight for me. And like the jamming section that you get at the end is also a highlight for me. And yeah, Bones is basically about like negative thoughts about aging, and like you get lines like I don't want to be crippled and cracked, and the repetitive chorus as well. And the key lines are also probably the second verse's mention of painkillers, and especially the Peter Pan metaphor that I alluded to. But yeah, for me, Bones was a nice, needed, return back to home base after the path that we were going down with High and Dry and Fake Plastic Trees. But it's a good song.
I agree. It is a good song, and it definitely feels like you mentioned with the sequencing. If they had gone three straight sad boy acoustic songs in a row, it probably would have sounded really good, but it also probably would have perhaps turned off the casual listener. And as we've been talking about this entire time, the pressure of trying to appeal to the audience to be successful was probably lingering on their minds. So that's why this track is the next track, and perhaps not the next track being the next track. But Bones does kick things back up, and I really like the guitar interplay on this track, how you get the slashing guitars that do sort of the same thing that they were doing on Planet Telex, mixed with a high melody line that sort of creates this uneasy, powerful feeling. And you get, it feels like there's at least two or three guitars, not bass guitars, that are going on at the same time. But on my third listen of this album for this review, I did notice the bass, and the bass by Colin Greenwood is really good. Like the comparables, I would say, are maybe like Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like, it's providing some decent, solid funk to go along with the trio of banging guitars. York sounds fine for the most part. I did think his yelps on the chorus were a titch on the much side, and I probably could have done without those, but I didn't hate them so much where I was like, oh no, this is bad. I was just like, okay, he's trying a little too hard, but that's okay sometimes. And I was also surprised by how relatively quick this track felt. Like, I'm pretty sure this is, if not the shortest, one of the shortest tracks on the record. So whenever it was done, I was like, oh, so we're just done here. I thought we were going to go for another couple minutes here. But yeah, I'm right there with you. Bones, very solid song, and it kind of almost feels like an anti-dance song. Like, the key line is, you got to feel it in your bones, which very much feels like old school rock and roll dance type things. Like, you got to feel it in your bones. But here they're saying, yeah, you got to feel it in your bones. But guess what? We can't. We're old. We got knee pain. It sucks. So I did appreciate that. But yeah, to me, this is a solid track. Probably middle-ish of the pack as far as overall feeling is concerned.
I feel like you were a little bit higher on the track than I was, and like that's perfectly fine. And I think I might have to go back and listen to the track one more time to like really zoom in on Colin Greenwood, because I'm always a good fan of a good bass player. Shout out to the bassist from Talking Heads, Weymouth. Like, if you want to hear me gush over a bass player, ladies and gentlemen. Just go back to our speaking in tongues episode. I was doing some gushing there.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I mean, and Tina Weymouth is a hell of a bass player. And so is Colin Greenwood. Like, he does a lot of great performances on this album, particularly on the harder rocking tracks where the bass is more pronounced. But yeah, I think we've both said our piece about Bones. I will kick things off with the end of the first half of this record, which is parentheses Nice Dream. Why it's in parentheses, I have no idea. That's on the band for to decide. But yeah, I noticed that we are once again back into acoustic territory, but not necessarily sad boy territory, or at least not full on sad boy like High and Dry or Fake Plastic Trees. And to me, this song, there were a couple moments on this album because I come into this album with a lot of, not a lot of understanding, but some understanding of Radiohead's further albums, like albums after the Bends or songs after the Bends. And to me, the song I was reminded of almost immediately listening to this was No Surprises off of OK Computer. Definitely a very melodic, very pleasant, very intentionally pleasant type of sound. And what makes it work is York's performance once again. His vocals are so tuneful and tight on this track where it feels very much in tune with the dreamlike instrumentation that is behind him. And the whole track, but especially the build towards the bridge and the guitar solo for that matter, is very much coded in 60s psychedelia or late stage Beatles, because when it gets that calm response, it starts building and building out of this sort of dreamlike state until it gets to the part where York is saying, "Now come on home," and Johnny Greenwood is going ape on the guitar, and it creates this feeling of you getting out of the dream. And there was a tiny part of me that wishes that's where the song ended, because, that's you waking up from the dream. But maybe that's just a little bit of a stumble, and they get back into the pleasant part for the remainder of the song. But again, the guitar solo is very psychedelic. The call response build towards the guitar solo is wonderful. And I'm just going to come out and say it. I like this track quite a bit, and it did land in my top 3. Nice Dream is my 3rd favorite track off of the Bends.
And that kind of took me by surprise, man, because, but I 100% respect that, and it's a very solid track, as, for my ears as well. Like, a lot of things that you mentioned, I do appreciate wholeheartedly. I'm going to start with it, call and response dynamic that you illustrated, where you get that guitar solo and it hits a nice counterpoint to the song, and it does really, especially sound really impactful when York is singing "Now Come Home," and now diving into that lyrics that "Now Come Home," the way that it's impactful within the context of the song. The whole song, Nice Dream, you take a look at the lyrics, they love me like I was brother, they protect me and listen to me. York is basically just dreaming of an ideal life. People where he has people he can rely on, people love him, protect him, but then he kind of has a sad boy mentality. Nice dream. You get that, and then you get the lyrics, Now Come Home. This is him waking up from that dream, and the way that the sonic palette is illustrating that waking up, and it's very impactful, very loud. It's very good. I very much love the sonic illustration there. Top notch, man. And outside of those moments, though, I do appreciate the way that the instrumental palette is laid out. Again, Johnny Greenwood gets the Star of the Show award here with this track, with his ability to switch up, with his ability to provide a solid foundation in the verses. No shade to the drums. Again, they're doing a solid job, but again, like if you're listening to it like pretty intently, like Johnny is just like, he's very much at the forefront. He's leading the charge on the instrumental front. And then you get to switch up in the chorus where things become more dreamlike, and that's just very nice. And like also like I do like the inclusion of the strings within the track. It adds a beautiful texture, but it doesn't become overpowering. It's just a nice thing. And yeah, the only thing I gotta highlight here is that that call and response dynamic you get in the second chorus is another gut punch for me. Like you get the nice stream. If you think you're strong enough, if you belong enough, if you think that you're strong enough, if you think you belong enough, like, oh my god, that's just like it's a little bit of a gun punch, but it's an effective gun punch nonetheless. But not so much that Nice Dream was a top track for me, and it's not even a top cut for me, if I had to be honest with you. So, but I very much respect your opinions and your feelings about the track. It does elevate actually my appreciation for it, if I had to be honest with you.
Yeah, again, this was one of those ones where my top two were pretty much set in stone, and my third favorite track could very much fall in certain laps. I gave it to Nice Dream this time around, but on another listen, I could give it to Planet Telex or Fake Plastic Trees. But yeah, just something about the way that it sounded sonically and musically. It's on the basic side. Like, it's very much, coded to be like, hey, this is supposed to sound like a dream, and it sounds like a dream. It's like, well, you guys set out what you accomplished, so I'm going to give you marks for it. So, yeah, Nice Dream worked for me and did find its way into my top three. But I do understand why it may not be for everybody, because it might just be a little basic, and it may not quite rock as hard as some of the other tracks that we are going to get to on the second half of this record.
And let me just be perfectly honest with you. Like, this song here, Nice Dream, to put it into context with, like, my appreciation for it versus other Radiohead songs off this album, it's kind of hard comparing, like, big songs like this to, like, other songs that I'm just more drawn to. And a song like Nice Dream, within a context of like another review of like I don't know, like in our next review, I don't know what you have cooked up for us, but if a song like that ended up in that album, and that could easily have been a top 3 spot and even like a top cut spot for me. So like I do appreciate it nonetheless. It's just personal preference at this rate, man.
That's perfectly fair. And again, like we've said before, personal biases are not discouraged on this show. I mean, we talked before about how a song landed in your top 3 because you used to play it on Rock Band, and it happened to be my least favorite song on that record. And in case you're wondering what song that was, go check out our Blink-182 review from several weeks ago. But yeah, like it just depends on what you like and what you think is the best. So yeah, it's very much a matter of opinion, and I respect yours, and I'm glad that we're sort of on the same level of respect for each other's opinions on this episode.
So, before we journey into side B of the record, Matthew, I have a question for you.
And what is that question, Mr. Kearns?
If the dear listener out there wants to start out the new year right and support people who they really just enjoy what they bring to the table week in and week out, and we are one of those peoples. I'm keeping that grammar as is. And they're kind of searching for ways to like help support what you and I do on a week in, week out basis, because they're really enjoying this episode here right now. What are some ways that they can do such things? And also, if they want to go the extra mile, what are some ways that they can further connect with us on other platforms?
The way that they can do any of those things is to start by continuing to listen to Hey Listen to This, and by doing so, supporting us in what we do. And how you can do that is by finding us on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. We are on Spotify, we are on Apple Music, we are on Pocket Cast. We're pretty much wherever you can find podcasts. And another one of those places is the video streaming service known as YouTube. You might have heard of it. And we are on YouTube with our own channel called Hey Listen to This. And if you find us on there, we upload our episodes every week, whether it be regular episodes or discography drafts. That is where you can find us there. And if you like what you are listening to on any of those platforms, let us know by either giving us a 5-star rating or liking, commenting on our videos, subscribing to our channel if you're on YouTube, or subscribing to any of our feeds through any of the other means, because you can subscribe on Spotify or Apple Music. And I found out about that literally just a few weeks ago. So, I'm not the most technologically developed person, but I can at least tell you that you could follow us on the streaming platforms as well. Speaking of following us, if you want to recommend this episode to somebody, but you're not sure who that somebody is, and you want to push it out towards a vaster audience, you can do so on social media, because we too are on social media. We are on Blue Sky, we are on Facebook, we are on Threads, we are on Instagram, and if you're looking for us on any of those platforms, the username, just as it is on YouTube, is ttheylisten. That is ttheylisten. Or if you just look up the name of the show, Hey Listen to This, you could just look for the blue logo with the black microphone and find us that way as well. And you can find all of our episodes that we've done starting back in 2023, now in the year of 2026. Lastly, if you want to reach out to us directly, but you do not know us directly, we have an email account you can reach us at. That is ttheylisten@gmail.com. Again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com. And if you want to reach out to us, you can give us some feedback, some positive stuff, some stuff you'd suggest, or maybe an album you'd like to suggest, because we have done requests before and we would like to do them again heading into 2026. So that is how you can reach out to us, how you can listen to us, and how you can show us some love for what it is that we do here on Hey Listen to This. And for those of you who have done that already, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, we are not sponsored by any major corporate brands. We are not part of any major podcast network. We literally are two dudes recording this in their bedrooms as I speak right now. And we are just loving talking about music, and we're glad that you've joined us on the journey. And Ryan, as always, I thank you for being a great co-host and helper for this pod, because it's been fun, man. It's been a fun ride, and I'm glad we're continuing into 2026.
And right back at you, man. I just got the Facebook memory today that when we covered the Julian Baker album, Turn Out the Lights, man, and like the musical journey that we've taken throughout this project has been phenomenal. And like I very much appreciate the ability just to sit down, listen to music that both you and I care about, and just really just talk about it, because I don't know, if you spend 30 seconds online, you can easily start doom scrolling, and this provides both you and I, and also the dear listener, an avenue to not doom scroll and just appreciate good art, or just our banter back and forth, for lack of a better descriptor there.
Right. And, banter's always good to have, because it's nice to have good discourse about the things you like, or the things you hope you like, because we've had some rougher reviews too, but we will not talk about those right now. Instead, we will get back into this review, which is of Radiohead's The Bends from 1995. And we are now on the back half of the record. And Ryan, it is your turn to kick things off, and I will let you do that with the song Just.
Yeah, so with Just here, for those of you who are out there and have not seen the music video for Just, I heavily suggest you do so, because it is a very impactful music video. It's probably affected my opinion about the song for one reason or another. But yeah, here we shift back into the rocking Radiohead gear here, 100%. I mean, the guitar work again here from Johnny Greenwood. He's starting to become my instrumentalist that I focus on throughout this review, because I think I've mentioned him in every single track here so far, and rightfully so. The way that he's able to switch between the rocking riffs coming out of the gate. And just the ability for him to shift modes, it's just so good. And then another, like, little detail that I always appreciate is there was a couple of moments within the track where he imitates the vocal line. He's like, pound for pound right there with York. Always a treat for my ears. And then moving away from him, the cliffhanger effect between the verse and the chorus plays off so well. And it, like, that is starting to become a musical kink for me. I very much enjoy that. And also, speaking about musical kinks, we get a solid stop-start section towards the back half of the track. So good, and that start after that stop kicks into like a jam session. It's so good. I very much appreciate that. The chorus is so solid, comes across very well, pretty simple. I mean, the song is basically about, like, like, for me, like, it's just somebody who just does it to themselves. Like, everything that bad happens does it to them. Like, they're self-sabotaging at that rate. But, like, peeking behind the curtain, though, the song was written about a narcissistic friend of York's that was pissing him off, and it developed musically out of a contest with Johnny Greenwood and Tom to see who can fit the most chords into a song. That's and yeah, like I said, like, the song is about depression, self-loathing, alienation that modern life brings, and the protagonist speaks of paranoia driving him from society almost to the purest hell, and he blames himself for it, like I illustrated with the self-sabotage aspect of it. But there's not a real, like, lyrical highlight for me. So yeah, the only other thing I got to say about just wrapping up my opinions about the track is, ladies and gentlemen, we have completed the trilogy. Did just enough to become my third favorite track off the record.
I respect that. And I'll just spoil it right away. This did not complete my top three. But I did like a lot about this track. First of all, you mentioned how there are so many chords on this song. And I did pick up on that, and I very much picked up on, like you said, Johnny Greenwood's playing on this track. The guitar interplay, especially towards the end of the song, is super strong. The solo is very good. It very much reminded me of a track that, in this time of their recording, had not existed yet, which is Paranoid Android. It very much reminded me of that same sort of blazing finger play as far as the guitar solo is concerned. I did understand Tom York on this chorus when he's just howling out, "You do it to yourself." And once again, you get that bitterness, that very plaintive, yeah, this is how I feel, and I'm going to let you know about it type of sound, which I did appreciate it. And I also really liked how on the verses, each line was resolved early, and it had that little, like, nice little guitar lick that lasted like half a bar, and then it gets right in the next line. I thought that was pretty slick. I thought that was a nice, interesting twist on the traditional feel of any type of basic power, because otherwise, the opening chords very much signify this is going to be another hard rocker sound, and it is, and the band sounds good while doing it, because I know a lot of people don't consider, like, Radiohead, especially with later work, to be a super prime, like, balls to the wall hard rock band, but when they do get on it, as we've seen a few times on this album, they're really good. They're really good at rocking out. So, this track is probably in the upper half of the album for me, just because it has such a powerful sound behind it, especially on the guitar. But it didn't quite do enough to land in my top three.
And I talked about the beginning of my opinions about the track. I think the music video really kind of, like, did it over, like, not did it over, but, like, carried it across the finishing line when popping it into top three. And I know we're talking about listening, not watching, but still, like, it's always a favorite track of mine. I knew going into this review that Just was probably gonna be in a top 3 spot, but yeah, honest with myself, and I do respect your opinions about it. And it's interesting that you mentioned about how Radiohead is not known. Like, a lot of people won't give them credit for, like, being like a rocking kind of act. And I think about, like, their project, well, the side project, The Smile, and they have the song "You'll Never Work in Television Again." Very much a balls to the wall kind of song. But, anyways, I digress. Matthew, are you ready to carry us on into the next track here, which is very much not like the last one, in that track being My Iron Lung?
Yes, My Iron Lung. And the first thing I noticed about this track right away is I don't think I've ever heard a Radiohead song with such a basic beat. Like, no knock on Phil Selway. He does a very good job laying the beat down. But this is almost something you would hear in, like, Blur's Song 2 or Smashing Pumpkins' 1979. And you really don't expect it from Radiohead. Even on their later stuff, you don't expect a beat this very 1, 2, 3, 4. Not that it's a bad thing, but I did notice it to me. I was like, oh, interesting. And I think part of the reason why that beat was so basic is because the guitar on this track is so sonically menacing. It just has that piercing line and the staccato stutter overlaying with each other to sort of create this, like, feeling of like you're in. Well, I mean, let's just cut to it. The song is about My Iron Lung. For those who don't know what an iron lung is, it is an old school breathing device that helps someone who is very much in trouble with having any issues breathing or staying alive, for that matter, trying to breathe. So, I almost feel like they thought of, like, oh, hospital. What does a hospital sound like through a guitar? And that's what Johnny Greenwood came up with, and I respect that. And Tom York's voice, I did like it on this track. It is running the gamut from all the low notes to the higher notes that he has throughout the verses. And very much, this is the first time I really noticed a trick they've used twice on this same album. Because much like the bends, the frenzied bridge sections, which again I'm just going to call them the bridges, showcasing a very, like, claustrophobic darkness that Tom York is singing about. The rest of the song is very melodic in its own twisted alt-rock way, but on those bridges you can definitely feel like the tunefulness sort of pulling back and really just being drums, guitar noise, and Tom York once again feeling like he is trapped within himself, trapped within this iron lung, trapped within a state he doesn't want to be in. So it's very effective. But overall, I thought this track was solid. Probably not in my top half, but definitely a solid song nonetheless.
So, yeah. And my take on My Iron Lung is I'm going to start with the contextual sake of the lyrics themselves. So, I kind of alluded to it with the introduction of it. Like, there is a bar within the song that is, "This is our new song, just like the last one, a total waste of time." And this is very much a wink, 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 nudge, nudge to Creep. And, like, if you actually kind of take the chord structures and analyze both those songs, they're kind of, like, very similar, like, if you think about it. So I very much love that, like, wink at the camera, like, that Radiohead's doing here. And, like, also, like, the Iron Lung specifically, it's a metaphor directly for how Creep was keeping the band alive financially. But it was also very constraining, and they perceived it as forcing them to play a certain style of music. So yeah, I thought that was kind of fun. So going outside of the lyrics and the contextual sake, though, is just the overall way that the song builds and shifts throughout the song. It's very effective, and I very much appreciate it. Like you talked about Greenway Johnny's ability to like have that very like menacing guitar sound, and it's like for me it's very anxiety inducing, and it's like I very much like how you highlighted the counterpoint of that being the solid foundation of Colin and Phil just laying down a pretty basic beat. Like again, I haven't given them a lot of credit throughout this review, but like that counterbalance between the instrumentals there, it's very nice, very effective, very much appreciated. And just the again to gush over Johnny Greenwood a little bit more because I haven't done that enough apparently. The way that he's switching up between the arpeggiated licks in the verses and just the rocking licks throughout like the chorus, like the thing that you highlighted, it's just so good. And also you get like random moments where he's just adding like random licks as well, like complimentary to like the whole song. So like very good, really great stuff that's going on here. That rocking section, by the way, it's so good. And like honestly, you could like look up the lyrics for it, but honestly, it's not really like needed. Like you get lyrics like the head shrinkers, they want my everything, my Uncle Bill, my Bushima beacon, like nobody knows what that means, and it doesn't have to mean anything. It just gets the people going. But anyways, like outside of that though, like one other thing I do want to highlight is like that bridge that occurs. It's a nice breath of fresh air compared to like the chaotic nature of the rocking sections and the anxiety-inducing guitar sounds that you find in the verses. This was one of the close to a top spot songs for me. This is one of two songs that could have made the cut into a top 3 territory, but did not for one reason or another. But I do respect the hell out of this song.
I respect the hell out of it too. I very much agree with you. That is a very hard rocker. It sounds very good. And it is a nice little twist on the different expectations that not only we have of Radiohead, but Radiohead had of themselves, where they kind of come out and say, like, this is, our follow-up, but it sounds the same, which in a couple ways it does, but in a couple ways it doesn't. Because, again, you're not going to hear that beat on a Radiohead song probably ever again, unless it's something well on down the line. Which, again, I'm not the most educated Radiohead person, so there might be a song that sounds like this on the drums. All of that to say, I dug My Iron Lung, and I'm glad you dug it just a little bit more than I did. But I am ready to move on to the next track, which is Bulletproof, I Wish I Was.
I wish we were all bulletproof, man. It would make life a little bit more interesting. Anyways, I digress. So,
right.
Yeah, with Bulletproof here, it's we shift back into that sad boy Radiohead territory. I mean, it's very complimentary of like fake plastic trees and high and dry. What this song does, I think it more embraces like that sad boy solemnness. The song is fantastic in execution and composition through and through. The instrumentation here is so stripped back, but also it's kind of murky at points. Like you get that acoustic guitar leading everything, but you also get the inclusion of like synth patches that just have that kind of warbly effect that is very much a precursor to what we find in like OK Computer and Kid A, like their big explosion into the alt rock scene. But yeah, that electric guitar lick that lifts the song during the chorus is a nice touch. I'm always a fan of when bands can have songs like this and they add just another element and it doesn't overpower the song. It's just adding like a different spice to the song. So very nice, very effective. York's vocal delivery here, it's pretty amazing. It's very emotional, but yet withdrawn. which works well within the context of the song, and it plays to York's strengths as a vocalist through and through, and essentially like the only thing I got to mention about like the song itself before I dive into like the lyrics here is that the backing vocals are a nice touch when they pop in during the song. I thought that was very nice, very effective. The song as a whole is just wanting to be. It's about wanting to be stronger emotionally, and the one lyrical highlight that I do want to highlight because I could probably dive into several like bars here, but the one that was just like, oh, well, fuck me with this line here was so pay me money, take a shot, lead, fill the hole in me. And I'm like, oh my god, fuck me with that song, man. Like the way that lyric is delivered and it's written, like you're almost paying someone to kill you to fill that emptiness that you feel inside you. Like, oh my god, it's so good. But yeah, overall though, like this song was so good. I very much appreciate it. Again, this is the other song within the track list in here that could have popped into a top 3 spot for one reason or another. I think I'm just more partial to what's being brought to the table with Just. And I mean, I could have had like 3 sad boy Radiohead songs in my top 3 and called it a day. But I don't know. I like to have some like variety in my top 3. Some DEI, if I can be so bold.
That's totally fair. Having a little bit of diversity never hurt anyone ever, and I hope that message gets across more so in 2026 than it did in 2025. But as far as my thoughts on Bulletproof, I wish I was. I do agree with you that the instrumentation is very effective because you do go back to that softer acoustic sound, but it is very much, contrasted with York's vocals being, once again, teetering between mellow and uneasy, and also the synth lines that create those weird sound effects that make this feel, like it separates it from being, something that the Carpenters would have sang, for example. No knock on the Carpenters, just using them as an example. So yeah, it's softer, but it's not weaker or more relaxed. It's still very much on the tense side. That being said, if I'm going to be completely honest, this is the one track on the record that could have been a bottom track for me. And it's not because of anything the song does. Like, I agree, the execution is good. The execution throughout is very good, and it doesn't sound bad in the slightest. So if I were listening to this album front to back, I wouldn't skip this track at all. Like, it's a good sounding track. But the one problem I had with it is the fact that it creates such a dreamlike sound and such a softer ideology. And it feels like what York and the band were trying to do was very much similar to what they did on High and Dry, where the lyrics were trying to sort of, undercut how soft it was, or the softness was trying to undercut the lyrics and how depressive they were. But it just felt like everything was too clean and polished. Everything was too nice sounding. To the point where it felt like the lyrics that it was trying to convey with some sort of depth didn't feel very deep. Like, I thought the way that he was singing about feeling bulletproof and feeling vulnerable, it felt a little too relaxed. And I know I said that it's not completely relaxed, because the sound effects, that did save it from being well down there. Like, if this was just a simple acoustic ballad sung as it was, like, it might have been a bottom track. But, and no, it probably wouldn't have been, because it still would have sounded really good. Because again, like you said, the execution is so well that it's kind of hard to imagine a bad version of this song. But it felt like what it was trying to go for, it didn't quite get. But that's just my opinion on it. Otherwise, as far as just listening to it, like if I'm listening to this in the background or just as I'm driving, as I did the other night, and the calamity of snow that we've gotten here in Western PA, it's pleasant. It sounds very good. York sounds good. The guitar sounds good. Everything sounds good. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Bulletproof.
And I respect that. I feel like with Bulletproof here, like it's a good litmus test for like how someone appreciates Radiohead as a whole. Because like this is very much their sunken place kind of song. But I feel like we've discussed Bulletproof pretty effectively. We've discussed how both you and I wish we were Bulletproof. I feel like it's time for us to talk about the next track here, Black Star.
Yes, Black Star, which once again goes back into hard rock mode, maybe for the sake of juxtaposition or anything of that matter. And it starts very interestingly with a fade-in, which is not something you hear in rock music very often, or really in any type of modern pop music very often, where it just sort of fades into the action, and you're just like, okay, we're going with this now, cool. And here you get a weird scenario where the band sounds fine. The band sounds fine. Greenwood both sound good, as does Phil Selway. And York, it's weird. He sounds good throughout the track, but he's much clearer on the hook. Like, you can pretty much understand him word for word on the hook, but on the verses, you can sort of tell he's sort of getting into that blurry vocal territory that he's sort of making his calling card. And again, he sings so tunefully that he gets away with it, but lyrically, it's kind of hard to understand him. Even to the point where towards the back half of the record, when it's just York, Colin Greenwood on bass, and Phil Selway on drums, where it's pretty much just isolated to the point where York is the focus, he's still doing the blurry vocal thing. All of that is very much nitpicking. I don't actually think he sounds bad at all on this track, and I don't think the band sounds very bad at all on this track. I have no idea what the lyrics mean, so I would defer to you as to what they could possibly mean. But in my honest opinion, I didn't have a whole lot to say about the song, because to me, this was very much a solid, strong album track. Probably not my top half, but definitely a good, solid, hard rocking tune from Radiohead.
And I agree with you with that general like overview of the song. Like, it's a very solid rocking tune. I guess I'll start coming out of the gate and addressing the lyrics and what they actually do mean. For me, I felt like this was about a relationship hitting rock bottom, but also kind of like, you know, within that relationship hitting rock bottom, they find something that is a scapegoat for the reason why it hit rock bottom. Like, you know, you could probably use like countless amount of metaphors, like, you know, lack of money, like, you know, hey, we don't go out anymore, or the economy, like, you know, I digress. But like, you know, one set of lyrics that really just kind of highlighted that whole feeling for me was, I get home from work and you're still standing in your dressing gown. Well, what am I to do? I know all the things around your head and what they do to you. It's just like somebody comes home, they see that their partner is still hasn't changed clothes, hasn't taken the shower, hasn't done anything with their day, and that person is depressed within that relationship, and that person doesn't know what to do. And another set of lyrics that really just was a highlight for me was the troubled words of a troubled mind. I try to understand what is eating you. I try to stay awake, but it's 58 hours since that I last slept with you. So, like, you know, trying to understand of like, hey, what's going on, but you also kind of just want to solve the problems by having sex, I guess. But yeah, very much an emotionally complex song within the lyrical front here. Zooming out of the lyrics though and talk about the instrumentation, like the instrumentation, it's pretty solid. Like, I really do appreciate what's going on in the verses. Like, the guitar, who I've praised throughout this review, said, like, you know, Johnny Greenwood, if you ever want to just hang out with me one day, you're more than welcome to. Also, that would be fucking insane. But also the bass and the drums are also doing very solid parts within their own right. So, like, you know, shout out to, like, you know, Phil and Colin as well. Like, you know, you guys definitely deserve your flowers in this track here. Also, the same could be said for the chorus. The guitar lick that you hear in the chorus lands just so well in, like, you know, to my ears. And that's basically that lick specifically after the the chorus ends lyrically. So like that's just so good. And then York's vocals here, they work within the two modes of the song. Like his voice during the chorus complements the instrumentation so well, but he's also able to strip that back when things get a little bit more solemn. So like, shout out to him. Excellent job on the vocal front. But yeah, I guess like this I would put this song very much in the lane of like the bands in terms of like good song has different moments, but I just prefer other songs off the album.
And that's kind of where I am too. Like, there are other songs I would prefer compared to Black Star, but it's not a bad song by any means. It's a good, solid rocker that, again, does get its point across. I'm glad you went into the lyrical deep dive of what the song is, because I could kind of tell just on listening to it that it was very much about someone at their wits' end saying, okay, well, what can we blame it on? There must be something out there that is causing all of this, and it's frustrating. So, but I am ready to move on to the penultimate track off of the Bends, Ryan, and that is the song Sulk.
So, if I'm not mistaken, before I dive into Sulk, Matthew, you have yet to reveal your king of the castle, right?
That is correct.
All right. So, all right. I'm gonna lock in my choice right now. Don't give away anything. This might be a little bit of personal bias, but I feel like the closing track is gonna be your favorite track. Sulk is not gonna be your favorite track, but your opinions, your opinions. You could pull the rug from out underneath me and change up my whole worldview going into 2026. We'll see. So, but and going into like my feelings about Sulk, the penultimate track off the record, song is solid and it comes across pretty nicely. But I'm gonna be honest with you, like Bones, like this is basically kind of like in album track territory, though. I mean, like the one thing that kind of sets it apart for me, like I don't want to say like forgettable, but like one of the noteworthy things about the track is that overall swing feeling that you get from the whole song, especially from the guitar hitting that single note lick and the verses, like the very much a touch tone. Like I thought that was a highlight. It was a great touch. And also shout out to Colin Greenway. The bass is kind of going ham in the verses. Like I noticed that I'm like, oh, okay. You're kind of like peeking through this like swinging kind of song. So like shout out to you, Colin. You're doing an excellent job, and Phil is also doing a nice job as well. He's really doing a great job establishing that swing, that swing feel that the group is going for. So, and you also you get that rocking section that comes in at certain points, and that's another nice touch. But yeah, the only other thing I gotta mention about the song before I kind of give my only nitpick of it, and probably my only true nitpick off the whole record, is like this song here was written as a response to the Hungerford massacre that occurred in Hungerford, Berkshire, England on August 19th, 1987. 70 people, including the proprietor, were killed in that massacre. But yeah. My only real nitpick about the song though is York's vocals. He sounds flat when he's in that in the chorus. Like it doesn't come across naturally and nicely for me. Like it's kind of a shame, because if we maybe if it was sung a little bit better, it could have just obviously not been like a potential bottom track for me, but it would have been landed a lot nicer to my ears. It might have bumped up my rating here a little bit of the overall record. But yeah, it's a good song nonetheless. But like, I just can't get over York's vocals. Like, if the instrumentation wasn't doing what it was doing, this could have been a bottom track for me.
So I'll start with what you ended on, which is York's vocals. I kind of disagree with you on this. I thought York's performance was strong here, although I kind of understand where you're coming from, because he's sung so pretty on some of these other tracks, like High and Dry, like Nice Dream, and if I'm being honest, Bulletproof, because the performance alone saved it from being a bomb track for me. Here, I think he's going for a bit more of a, I guess, angry vocal, I guess is the word I would go for. Like, he's trying to go for his zombie, if you will, because he's writing about an incident that involved a lot of people dying, and he doesn't like it when a whole lot of people die. So he's going to put that out in print and just sort of release his anger on record. And sometimes when you're angry, you don't care to sing, whether it's an A or an A flat or a B or a B sharp. Yeah, like I get where you're coming from, but I didn't depreciate what he did. I thought it was a strong performance by him. But that being said, the lyrics are good. His performance is good. The band sounds fine on this. I did appreciate, like you said, sort of. I know you called it swing. I would say maybe it's more like a shuffle beat, making a nice change up on this album because everything's been pretty much straight 4/4 from here on through. So yeah, I thought the band sounded good. I thought Greenwood sounded good, but it still feels very much like an album track to me. So Sulk is not my favorite track on the album. So Ryan, your prediction was correct. The last track on this album is indeed my favorite.
And no insult to Sulk or what it's bringing to the table, but comparing Sulk to Street Spirit Fade Out, if you would have preferred Sulk as saying like, "Hey, this is the king of the castle," I would have been like, "Okay, that's a take. That's an interesting take." But there's other songs off the record. But oh wow, that was very passive aggressive. But for the sake of not being so passive and maybe being more aggressive and getting us to the conclusion of this review, Matthew, I'm gonna give the floor on to you. Tell the dear listener and myself why you think Street Spirit Fade Out is indeed the king of the castle.
Well, repeat what you have said many times, what I said that you said on High and Dry. I have ears. And this track very much just sounds so good. First of all, you start with Johnny Greenwood's guitar, where it's just hypnotizing. He has that guitar line that carries not just the tone of the song, but the mood of the song. Much like on My Iron Lung, where it feels like he's trying to emulate the sounds of a hospital with his guitar because they're talking about an iron lung. Here it feels like that moment where all the lights are dark, it's midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and the street lights are the only things that are lit. And it feels like, this is the end of the night, and this is the end of the album. And I thought it was just a very, very good performance from him throughout. Tom York once again sings amazingly, particularly with the way his voice rises on the chorus when he's singing fade out again. Like, I really, really dug that, and I thought that was really good. But what really drove the song home for me and put it a little higher than High and Dry, not by a lot, but by enough, was much like Nice Dream, that piece by piece build where it starts with just guitar and vocal, and then you get the drums and the bass, and then you get the strings, and then you get the drum switching to a bigger beat. And it just builds and builds and builds, and it just works so, so well. And lyrically, again, matches the sound of the song. Like, basically, Tom York is saying, all these things in our life are going to fade out, and this is a moment of reset. This is a moment where things can be new again. And the lyric that got me was him saying, immerse yourself in love. And I'm just like, you know what? Hell yeah, man. And the idea of immersing yourself in love is a message that I hope everybody can carry into 2026 and throughout the rest of their lives, because, sometimes it's hard, but you have to love yourself. You have to, at the very end of the day, take care of yourself, take care of who you love, and you should be on that list of people you love. So, yeah, musically, it's fantastic. Lyrically, it's wonderful. So, Street Spirit, parentheses, Fade Out, unparentheses, is my favorite track off of the Bends.
And I totally respect that. I mean, like, weirdly enough, this song did not come, was not one of the cuts for my top three, but I understand, like, a lot for a lot of the reasons you already illustrated, the reasons why this is your favorite track. So, like, I'm just gonna probably echo a lot of the stuff that you already talked about, but yeah, just the way that the song is an overall package, it's very haunting in several aspects, and the thing that was like coming out right out of the gate that was an immediate hook for me was that guitar motif that Johnny just repeats over and over. It's essentially a loop, for better for worse, and it's very good. It's very effective. And you also talked about like how you get piece by piece, like the song builds, and like I very much appreciated that as well. Like you get the drums that come in during the second verse, and that just adds such a nice touch as well. And then also like another thing that I did appreciate is the string like trills that you can hear during the chorus, like a little bit in the background, and like they're just so good. I'm always a huge fan of like when bands add like a texture like that, and for a casual listener just like putting this on the background while they're playing, I don't know, like NHL 25 for example, they may not like catch that, but if you actually sit down and listen to it, like it's a very rewarding experience. The way that York's vocals sound throughout the song just are they're so haunting. Especially the way that he sounds during the chorus, like it's just so good, so effective. And then you get the third verse having that you throughout this whole song so far, we've had that main guitar loop from Johnny dominating the instrumental landscape. Then you get that other guitar coming in, counteracting that guitar, and oh my goodness, like that just again so good. It just landed so well in my ears. And then yeah, the only other thing I gotta say about this song here is that York described the song as Radiohead's darkest song ever, one of their darkest songs ever, and in fact, York says that he almost performs this song towards the end of the concerts because it is just so dark. It literally like drains the strength out of him. And York is on record saying it hurts like hell every time I play it, looking at thousands of people cheering and smiling, oblivious to the tragedy of its meaning. Like when you're going to have your dog put down and it's wagging its tail out on the way there, man. But yeah, it's so dark, man. I do like the idea of like immersing your soul in love, because like York is presenting like this throughout the song as like this society that like he talks about like rows of houses all bearing down on me. I can feel blue hands touching me, the blue collar like lifestyle. All these things into position. All these things one day will swallow whole. Like everything's in position, but everything's essentially just collapsing on itself. The only way that you counteract that though is immersing your soul in love. But I love how like how everything ends with him bellowing that out, but you still feel the darkness, and the song ends with that just guitar like just eventually running out of steam. Very effective track, very effective closer throughout the whole record. Maybe Catch Me on a Different Day. This could have been a cut for me on a top track, and it probably should have been, honestly. But I'm sticking to my guns. It's a good track though.
Again, I respect you not having that, because this feels like one of those albums overall. We'll get to our overall thoughts in a second here. But this feels like one of those albums where the top threes could vary so differently just based on your own musical taste, because even though there is a uniformity in a lot of the tracks, particularly in York's vocals and Greenwood's guitar play and the rhythm section's consistency, stylistically it is diverse enough that if you have different music tastes, you'll probably end up with a much different top three. But
that being said, Matthew, I can't help but notice, and the listener probably has noticed as well, and you probably noticed as well, 12 tracks for up, for the start of 2026. And now 12 tracks have been smacked down for the start of 2026. Scorecards have been filled out, so there's only one thing left to say.
We did it, man.
Indeed, we did, man. We broke out of the shadow of being creeps, and we got the bends with Radiohead, and we didn't fade out because we're just starting strong with 2026, but we made it out on the other side of the year, man. So I'm gonna go first with my overall thoughts and ratings about this album here, because that was an interesting segue I just did there. But I'm gonna stick the landing there. So yeah, here I was very happy. If we would have done OK Computer, it would have been a great time. That album's incredibly dense, but I feel like the bands throughout my research and my the review process here, it's a very important record for Radiohead's discography, because without the bands, you don't get anything else. They could have just faded into obscurity, being a one-hit wonder band and just collapsing on itself. But I'm so glad that they did not. And the musical landscape is probably very thankful as well. But here, with the bands, you get a lot of different, takes on what the band was, at least started out with Creep and Pablo Honey, but they expanded their sound to, include different, songwriting tropes, different kind of, song compositions in its own right. You get, songs like Just, Bones, that are very rocking songs, but then you also get sad boy songs High and Dry, Fake Plastic Trees, Bulletproof, I Wish I Was, and then you also get very medicine songs Street Spirit, Fade Out. You get a lot of different textures, different takes on songs, and the performances overall are very impactful. Johnny Greenway gets the MVP award for this whole album, apparently, for me. His work throughout the whole record, his ability to shift styles, it's so good. And yeah, I kind of wish I enjoyed Sulk a little bit more. Again, I will still stand by the fact that York's vocals do sound flat during the chorus, but yeah, in terms of an overall rating here, I'm not going to give this a 10 out of 10, because I don't think that this is a perfect album. It's a great album. It's an amazing album. So I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10.
And for me, this was an interesting experience because, like you said, not only is this an interesting and important record in the Radiohead's discography and their journey as musicians, but I feel like, again, you also see the blueprint for a lot of indie rock heading into the late 90s and the early 2000s with this record, because the one thing that Radiohead chose not to avoid was emotion on this whole record. And you get that with songs like Street Spirit. You get that with songs like Bulletproof, with High and Dry. Even Fake Plastic Trees and some of the harder rockers like Black Star and the Bends. They are very emotional and emotionally driven throughout the entire record. So I give them full marks for putting that all out there. And like you said, Ryan, they teeter between going sad to going hard to going angry, and they really don't provide any joy as far as their own personal worldview. But what it creates is a joyous sound that is very much teetered towards not necessarily joy, but catharsis. They are getting their thoughts out there, and it is very much the audio equivalent of a therapy session, which, as we've been saying all along, is kind of what this album was meant to be, or at least reflects what they were feeling at the time. There's not really a bad note on this whole record. There's not really a very skippable moment. I could not really bring myself to skip any of these tracks. That being said, the lacking clarity in York's vocals did sort of bump it down a little bit, and a couple of the tracks did sound somewhat repetitive as far as tone. But still, when you're repeating something good, it's gonna sound good. So I'm not gonna knock it too much for the repetitiveness. And the highlights that I mentioned again, like Street Spirit and High and Dry, are really standout tracks in not just their discography, but throughout the 90s as well. So my overall rating is going to be just a slight hair under yours, and I'm going to give the Bends an 8.5 out of 10.
So, my 9 and your 8.5 makes the math pretty easy. I've gotten good at math over this past calendar year, man. I'm proud of myself. It averages out to be an average score of averageness, in that being a solid 8.75 out of 10, because
math
works for everyone. It's just numbers. It does not hate. It does not discriminate. Get over it, bitch. In terms of next album recommendations for me, there's several Radiohead albums that I can recommend out of here, but I'm just gonna not overthink it. I'm not gonna reinvent the wheel. I'm just gonna say, just go to the next record, OK Computer. Probably one of the most impactful records that they've ever released, alongside Kid A. But yeah, that's a fantastic record. A lot of the tracks that you mentioned already, Karma, Police, and Paranoid Android, are off there. Exit music for a film is on there too. There's so many tracks off there, Airbag. I'm done naming all the tracks off of OK Computer. But yeah, for those of you who have not listened to OK Computer in a while or yet to do so, what are you waiting for, man? Go check out that record, man.
And there's a couple avenues I could have taken with this. I was considering maybe recommending a Coldplay album, because does have some similarities to Radiohead, whether it be the one we reviewed, which was A Rush of Blood to the Head, or Viva La Vida. I also have considered putting an album you mentioned earlier, which was Julian Baker's Turn Out the Lights, but I'm not going to overthink it either. I am going to challenge our listeners and see your OK Computer and raise you a Kid A. Kid A will be my next recommendation, because on the Bends you hear Radiohead very much trying to get out of their shell and trying to, consider not being a typical rock band in the typical rock band mold. And I think with Kid A, they very much break through that and just become the Radiohead of lore, in a sense. So, a couple great tracks off there. The one that sticks out most to me is the national anthem, just because of that real funky bass line. But it's been years since I've listened to it, so I'm also recommending this to myself, in a sense. So for myself and for the listener out there, if you enjoyed the Bends, check out Kid A by Radiohead.
Oh man! So yeah, dear listener out there, if you've enjoyed the Bends, or if you listen to the Bends, you're like, hey, this didn't really make me a Radiohead kind of fan. Is there any other albums that I should check out? Well, both me and Matt recommend the next albums in their discography: OK Computer and Kid A. Listen to all 3 albums in a day. Make a Sunday out of it, man. But yeah, both fantastic albums. Yeah, man. So what a review, man. What a perfect way to kick off 2026. I mean, we didn't give it a perfect score, but I felt like it was a good review.
Yeah, I noticed that too. This unfortunately does break your streak of 3 straight albums in your mini-series, which has now come to a close. And this was a good one to close it on, but unfortunately did break that streak of 3 straight, entering the Hey, Listen to This Hall of Fame. I almost called it the old one. But I'm glad we talked about this, because I very much more appreciate Radiohead for what they are, and am very inspired to check out the 2 albums that we talked about.
So, yeah, this review has come to a close, but there's only one more piece of business that we have to do. We have to settle up before we karate kick this review into the upside down. Matthew, it is your turn to determine where are we going next in our next review of 2026, the year of our Lord. Matthew, what do you have cooked up for us?
So, I was going through our reviews that we did throughout 2025. And you know what I noticed, Ryan?
Well, what did you notice, man?
I noticed that throughout the entire year of 2025, I did not pick an album released in the year of 2025 for one reason or another. There were some albums that were close,
Yeah.
like the Jelly Roll album, but nothing that quite was released in 2025. So I'm going to start 2026 by remedying that and having you pick from two options of albums that were released in 2025. And I'm going to make you choose based off of two different color palettes, if you're ready.
I'm ready. I'm scared, but I'm ready.
All right, so your options for our next album review are black and green or green and black.
Black and green or green and black. Oh my god. I'm a little disoriented thinking about that. So, since green is my favorite color, I'm gonna go green and black first.
Okay, so for my first review of 2026, we are going to be talking about the 2025 release entitled Double Infinity by the band Big Thief.
Oh, okay. You hear that? You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? That's the sound of Ryan Kearns being hit out of left field due to like Matt just blindsiding me with that because I thought you were gonna be like the life of a showgirl is coming up next. So
No. The things I would say on that review might get both of us demonetized in like real life.
all right, cool. Well, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to dive back into that record. I listened to it a handful of times, but yeah, we'll talk about that next week when we do that episode. But yeah, for those of you out there who've not listened to Double Infinity by Big Thief, released last year in 2025, make sure you do so before next week's review. That way you have opinions about the album, and then you can have opinions about the opinions that me and Matt are going to be bringing to the table. But yeah, I'm just excited to close out this year, man, with a bang. It's going to be a pretty nice day, pretty nice night, and yeah, just can't wait to fade out this year and just go into next year with immersing my soul in love, man.
Amen.